Hello, welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, I'm Bibi. I'm the founder of a 10-year-old fashion business, and this channel is my outlet to share my journey running a successful fashion business. So in this video, we're going to be talking about pricing. Pricing is a major thing that affects not just fashion business owners, but all business owners. It's so important to price your products rightly, because if you're not, you might be underpricing, which means you might be selling but not making a healthy profit. And if you're overpricing, it means that your prices are not set in a way for you to sell as many as you possibly can. And in the long run, as a business owner, your goal is to make a healthy profit. I've lost money because of mistakes due to pricing. And I've also found that a lot of pricing mistakes stem from three major things. One, the cost structure of the business. Two, the targeted market. And three, the brand positioning. So let's talk about these three things. The very first thing is the cost structure. You have to have a clear understanding on the costs that are associated with running your business. Because if you don't even know the cost, it means that you're not properly accounting for the costs. You have to know the cost of goods. That's everything that goes into producing your garments. And you also have to know the indirect costs that are associated with running your business. The next thing is the target market. You have to have a clear understanding on who you're trying to sell to. It's important as a brand owner to have customer profiles. With a customer profile, it's not just the demographic, like where they live or how old they are or their sex. It's also the psychographic, getting a deeper understanding on the type of person that you're trying to sell your goods to. This will also inform on, first of all, the need for your product, what they're willing to pay for your type of product, and it will also help you in coming up with the perfect price structure that matches this audience. The next thing is your brand. Your brand positioning is everything, and it will determine what you can set your prices at. Remember that it's not about what you feel like your goods should cost. It's about what the customers are willing to pay. And what the customers are willing to pay will largely depend on how they see your brand. So now that we've talked about these three things, we're going to now go into the methods of pricing that you can use. The very first method of pricing is cost-based pricing. So with cost-based pricing, what you're trying to do is identify the costs, the direct costs, and then also make provision for the indirect costs. Direct costs include the materials that have been involved in production, the labor, everything that goes directly into producing whatever product that you're selling. For a fashion business, it would be your fabrics, it would be the accessories like your zips and your fusing, anything that goes into the production of that garment, including the labor. For indirect costs, you have things like your utilities, your rent, your marketing costs, your administration expenses. These are things that are not directly associated with producing the garment. These indirect costs need to be accounted for. You need to know everything that you need to run your business, and you need to find a way to accommodate those costs into the cost of your product. And once you've identified your indirect and your direct costs, then you can now mark up that cost to get your desired profit margin. Your desired profit margin will now depend on you and what your audience is able to and willing to pay for your goods. The second method of pricing is the value-based pricing. This is heavily dependent on the perceived value of the product that you're trying to sell, not necessarily the cost. The perceived value is heavily dependent on the brand positioning, the product differentiation, and the market. So brands like Apple are able to command a higher price because they have a strong brand. So regardless of how much the iPhone is produced or the MacBook is produced, they're able to mark it up several times over, regardless of the cost, because they have a strong brand. The next method of pricing is the psychological pricing. And with psychological pricing, it's basically just a play on numbers to sort of trick, would I say use the word trick? You use numbers like $49.99 instead of $50, for instance, because when a customer sees 49, they're thinking more for than they are 50. So say you walk into a store and you see something that's $50 and something that's 49. In your mind, without thinking about it too much, you're gravitating towards $49.99 because it's lower price. You find that a lot of brands do this, as opposed to putting a round figure. They'll put like a figure that's very close to the round figure, and this is psychological pricing. The next type of pricing is penetration pricing. So with penetration pricing, you can also see this as competitive pricing. So this is when you study the market, you study what's available, and you price your goods in such a way that it can be competitive with what's existing. So with this method of pricing, your goal is to gain market share. When you're pricing with this method, profitability is not necessarily your goal. You might be making a profit, but not necessarily the ideal amount that you want to make. The goal here is to gain market share. And this is particularly relevant for new brands. When you're going into a market and you're trying to stand out, you might want to explore competitive pricing in a way that helps you to gain customers. And once you're gaining your market share, once you're building a customer base, you gradually increase your prices till you get the optimum or the ideal profit margin that you want for your brand. So with these methods of pricing, you don't have to go one route. You can explore all the methods of pricing and see what works for your brand. I think it's very essential to always consider your costs. It's also essential to understand the perceived value of your brand, because that's going to, in a large way, affect the kind of prices that you can charge. And psychological pricing can also be explored, as well as penetrative pricing if you're trying to go into, even if you're not a new brand, but you're trying to go into a new category or launch a new product. It's also a method that you can explore. So you can see there's no one way to price your goods and services. You can explore all the methods to get optimum pricing for your products. So now we're going to explore pricing structures for fashion brands. There are three major pricing structures, and this is heavily dependent on the categories of brands that exist. There's so many categories of brands that exist, but there are three major ones. That's the luxury brands, which is on the highest end, and then we have the premium brands, which is more on the contemporary mid-range end, and then we have the mass brands, which is on the lowest end. So on the highest end, we have the luxury brands, and the luxury brands command the highest pricing. And most of these brands can command that pricing because of the prestige of the brand. They've grown the name of the brand over a period of time, and the brand perception, the perception of value is very, very high. With contemporary brands are more mid-range brands, less exclusive than the luxury brands, but they have their own form of exclusivity. For customers in the contemporary line, they're looking for high-end luxury-like experiences. So they still have a high expectation of the brands that fall into this contemporary position. But these brands are able to charge more than the mass brand, but less than the luxury brand. And on the lowest end is the mass brand. That's the high street brand. And these are the brands that often seek inspiration from luxury and contemporary brands and replicate the styles from those brands to a mass market. So examples of luxury brands would be brands like Hermes that's known for its craftsmanship, Chanel, Gucci, and on the contemporary side, we have brands like Polène, Rebecca Minkoff, Theory, Equipment, Demilier, And on the mass side of things, we have brands like Zara, H&M, and so on. It's important for you to know the pricing structures that exist so that you determine where your brand wants to be positioned. If you're positioning yourself as a contemporary brand or a mass market brand or a luxury brand, it's important to study the brands that fall in each category so that you know what you need to do, because customers are not just going to buy your goods because you say it's luxury. There's a certain level of expectation, there's a certain level of brand positioning that you need to put out there. If not, people are just not going to buy your products. So I hope this video has been helpful in helping you determine how you want to price your goods. Remember, you have to know your costs. Your cost structure is important. Your brand positioning is important. Your market, understanding the audience is also very, very important. Thank you so much for watching this video. I'll see you in my next one.